Sonic the Hedgehog. Without a doubt, it is one of those big classic sagas of video games that will never truly be forgotten. Back in the 90s, serving as Sega's mascot and Mario's rival, the blue blur was featured in some of the best critically acclaimed games at the time. Pretty much he was one of the two main figures leading the charge in gaming as a whole, defining the childhood of millions of children along the way. But I'm pretty sure we all know the rest of the story. After a couple of okay games, Sega attempted to reboot the series, to give it a fresh start and, hopefully, take the next big step toward the franchise's future. And then in the middle of that step, Sega tumbled and gave in to the cold hard concrete below. Enter Sonic 06. Acclaimed, yes, for being one of the worst games of all time. And it didn't stop there, no sir. Many still argue about what has been really going on in Sonic Teams' mind all these years. But what I think is that they have attempted reboot after reboot, introducing a new gimmick every game in an attempt to escape the franchise's terrible past. And instead, the company is pretty much just digging poor Sonic in a hole of terrible that gets deeper and deeper every single year. But it's weird, right? I mean, there really have not been that many instances where a franchise that's so huge falls so low, especially with video games and especially in the case of Sonic, which again was not just good, but one of the best. So really, let's get right to the point and address the question in the title, shall we? Just what is wrong with Sonic? Well, in order to answer that question, we first need to answer another one. When is wrong with Sonic? You see, this is actually a much discussed point among the critics. Some think that, obviously, the fall of Sonic began right around the transition to 3D, with good old furry fetish game here. But some put the line a little earlier in the timeline. Others go all the way and put it right around here, claiming that from the very first game there were some substantial issues. Then there are those who take it to the extreme and say that the point in which Sonic begins to show its flaws are right after Green Hill Zone Act 1. And to be honest, I kind of gravitate toward this side of the spectrum. Now don't get me wrong, I don't think that the first Sonic game is terrible, far from it. But you see, the first game of a franchise really carries a lot of weight, especially because it's kind of a resume for the developers. It tells you a lot about what they're thinking and what they're paying attention to during the creation of a game. And many times, if not always, the tendencies the designers show in the first game are carried to the others, for better or for worse. And honestly, after playing and analyzing this game recently, I did notice some interesting trends that I would like to share with you now. I've divided these little observations of mine in 3 main points. First of all, let's take a look at the movement. Now, it's kind of easy to see that in a platformer where the whole main concept is speed, movement would be kind of absolutely essential. But after playing the game, I noticed many little details that really made my moving through a stage a lot more bothersome than it should have. The camera is a big one. It moves way too much. Not only that, but it also feels way too zoomed in, showing very little relative to the speed at which the player is moving through the screen. What this basically means is that enemies and obstacles would pop out of nowhere and the player will realistically have no time to react to them. Apart from that, unlike the first Mario game, which decided to keep things simple and in a single screen, Sonic stages are a bit more open-ended. This sounds good, in theory, but in practice it often leaves you disoriented. Many times I was forced to take straight-up leaps of faith, as I had no idea where the ground was. Couple this with your crazy speeds and with the amount of traps, spikes, and lava everywhere, and you end up with a formula for...
And wow, we actually had...
Wait! Yeah, that. What I feel like they were going for here was giving the sense of dynamic movement through the camera and through big landscapes, but the goal wasn't really accomplished with flying colors. Also, there's the momentum mechanic. While pretty much necessary for the illusion of speed, it really doesn't go well with platforming sections, as it doesn't really allow for precise jumping and movements. In fact, because of this, Sonic has always been kind of wonky to control, always stopping a little later than you want him to, over or undershooting jumps, missing enemies when you're trying to aim at them, and so on. Basically, most Sonic stages are a lot like Mario Ice levels. Fun to run around in, not so fun once enemies and platforms begin to show up. Again, these are not errors that make the game unplayable, but noticing them is important. In fact, every single one of the things I just mentioned makes an oh so terrible comeback in most of the modern Sonic games. Terrible camera, disorienting maps, uncontrollable movement, traps, spikes, and other forms of merciless insta-deaths everywhere, and of course, lava. All of these elements make navigating through a stage feel not only disorienting, but also nerve-wracking. You don't really know where you're going, but you're going there very fast, and most of the times you're just walking right into your death. And finally, as an added touch, there's the enemy placement, which in many games is absolutely hellish. I never really felt like I was in control when playing most Sonic games. I feel like the easiest way to explain it is like this. Do you know those times where you're rocking on your chair and then you suddenly lose balance, but you don't instantly plummet, but are just stuck in that place of limbo and anxiety that feels horrible because you know exactly what your future awaits you? Yeah, that's movement in Sonic games. Now let's get right to my second point. The game plays itself. Oh, that's right, you heard me. One of the main criticisms of modern Sonic games is present, even if a bit more subtle, in the very first game of the franchise. To prove my point, I would just like to show you 3 situations that all take place in the second area of the game. So, right at the beginning. First off, take a look at this quote-unquote puzzle. No, seriously, take a good, hard look at it. If you hadn't noticed, what's wrong here is that there is no puzzle. This, believe it or not, is an instance of the game playing itself. There's no other option to the player, and the only given choice is really painfully obvious. Now some may defend the game, claiming that it wants to introduce the concept of block puzzles, but to that I have 2 rebuttals. First of all, there is a difference between an easy puzzle and this. I mean, come on people, Link to the Past came out the same year as this game. Second of all, block puzzles don't even make a return in the entirety of Zone 2. So why even have this here and introduce the concept so early on? It doesn't make any sense. But let's get right into the next situation, shall we? Take a look at this. Again, what's the point of those blocks being there? They serve no purpose at all gameplay-wise. And I can confirm that this is not introducing a new mechanic, as they are pretty much always used this way. They're just aesthetics, being there to make you feel you're doing something cool, when really you're just pressing one button. Now doesn't that sound familiar, Sonic fans? Finally, take a look at this. To me, this is pretty much just insulting. There's no other way, no room for error or thought. The game is not suggesting the player to push those blocks, it's not giving clever clues that indicate that they should probably push those blocks, it's forcing them to. No thought, no challenge, put A on B and it's done. Sadly, this ugly game design choice comes back many times throughout the series, most notably for me in the desert stage of Sonic Adventure. And these are just the 3 examples I could talk the most about, but the game is filled with these aesthetically pleasing but ultimately empty sections and gimmicks.
Whoa!
What? Whoa, what?
What? That shit sold the Dreamcast right there.
Oh my god! Holy crap!
Oh, there you go.
Damn, dude, great work. Ooh.
Thanks. I just held up for a while.
And finally, the big one. The big defining point of my argument. The game's feel and final goal. Just what makes Sonic a fun experience? Well, the answer is as clear as could be. Speed. It feels good to go fast in a game, to feel like you're keeping a constant motion with a certain rhythm, to challenge your reflexes and reaction time to quickly avoid obstacles and incoming enemies. It's satisfying. But ultimately, can this really be the driving force of a full-fledged game? After all, console games are expected to have a certain level of depth, but with Sonic it seems every attempt to give the game any more depth that it already has in its purest of forms ends up with disaster. Bigger wars make it disorienting, Puzzles and traps go against the game's mechanics. Non-challenging safe gimmicks that could actually integrate better are just plain boring. And finally, I've come to the realization that platforming as a whole contradicts the very essence of Sonic's appeal as a game. Here is my theory. The indie and mobile game boom that has taken place recently has showed us that some concepts can be fun while kept simple and true to their essence. The reason as to why Sonic is always more fun in the first stage of every game is that there is nothing else to worry about other than the soul of the experience, moving fast and reaching the end. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what Sonic needs, and that's why Sega has been so unsuccessful these past few years. They've been doing the complete opposite of what they should have. Instead of making Sonic more complicated, what they should have been aiming for is making it simpler. Ditch the stupid gimmicks and the new characters and the game modes and the stories and oh god the designs, and stick with what you know best. Maybe, just maybe, Sonic would work best if implemented in a basic game that's just about moving and nothing else. And, with that being said, may I present to you what I believe to be the closest thing to a true Sonic game that I've seen to this day. Now before you call either a psychiatrist or the police, please allow me to explain myself. Pepsi Man is a game that stars, well, Pepsi Man. The objective is to reach the end of each level within a certain time limit. Simple, yet fun and engaging. The levels are a lot like obstacle courses, where you're really not fighting enemies per se, but are just trying to avoid elements of the environment. This creates an interesting dynamic between the player and the stage itself, and it gives every course a lot more personality. Plus, although the game starts off simple, with the only commands being jump and duck, in later levels the game becomes relentless, and there are a lot more options and freedoms given to the player regarding how they want to navigate each stage. For instance, Pepsi Man has the option to either stop or go even faster. This creates a very interesting dynamic of risk and reward, in which the player can choose to slow down in certain parts to clearly see what's coming and avoid obstacles more easily, but in doing so he's losing time, so he's forced to play it risky and use the turbo in other parts of the stage to beat the time limit. It's great! And look, I know many of you are going to disagree and are going to say that some Sonic games are clearly better than Pepsi Man, but that's not really the point I'm trying to make. With this video, I'm not trying to say that Sonic games in general are bad. I'm trying to say that the basis upon which every game is conceived, a platformer, with all the elements that it implies, may not be the best for the main concept of Sonic. With Pepsi Man, all of the problems I mentioned throughout this video are gone. No camera issues, no wonky movements, and although there is a gimmick in almost every stage, at no point the game plays itself, and instead they just make the experience even more engaging and fun. I strongly believe that if Sega takes what Pepsi Man did and polishes it, adds more mechanics, better levels and obstacles, and so on, we might have the definitive Sonic game in our hands. Plus, let's face it, between a game that's so out there and original such as Pepsi Man, that tried something completely new both story and gameplay wise, and a cold, heartless, corporate, mediocre, predictable attempt at a game such as Sonic Boom, which would you rather play? I would personally go with Pepsi Man any day. But hey, that's just me. As it has been in the past 3 videos and as I wish it would always be, what I want is to begin a conversation. So please, if you think I was wrong, tell me. And if you have any other ideas as to what is wrong with Sonic and how we could fix it, feel free to go in the comments and tell me. I'm actually really interested. After all, I feel like Sonic has left a bigger mark in media than just being a game character. And heck, if Sega did something right, it's his design, which I think is one of the best I've ever seen. From comics to memes, Sonic really is beloved by a lot of people, and it would honestly be great if he actually made a successful comeback in the gaming scene. For now, thank you so much for watching, let's hope for the best in the Blue Guy's future, and remember to keep your knowledge up.